So anyway, I appreciate just the unselfishness, and as you can see today, sometimes in the world we live in, we forget those virtues, and those virtues are still relevant today, and don't let anyone steal that from us. And so as we think about helping our clients, and you see my first slide here, you see young people, and you see young people that are curious, that are engaged in what we're doing, and this is what motivates me besides helping our clients. And so, you know, they told me that we really wanted to invite young veterinarians and maybe some older veterinarians to be a part of this, to just to share. So I would encourage you to think about, am I an investment or an expense? And as you see, as we go through this slideshow, my presentation, we'll move from who we are as veterinarians to maybe some examples of how this has really worked for me and my practice. So this is, maybe this is a reminder to me. And oftentimes I create these lists of why do I do what I do, and I share them with people so that it helps them understand about me, but also creates accountability to me. So we get up every day and go to work because I care about people. I want them to be successful. I want their operations to succeed. And you know, the word sustainable is well overused, but I want the next generation. You know, we've practiced here long enough that we worked for grandfathers and now fathers and now grandchildren, and we're on the third and fourth generation, and that's a very humbling experience. And so those operations with our county, and our desire is to help them succeed and enjoy what they do. There's personal freedoms in what we do, and we want to support our local community. There's 800 people that live in Ashland, and there's 6 or 7 veterinarians some days that work here. And our goal is to be a part of that community and the fabric of it. And it's simple things like we've had more than one veterinarian be involved with school board and the hospital board, and serving on different organizations with our community. I think as professionals, we have to come back to our communities and not only serve, but get engaged so we can live. So, and lastly, I put this in this order. You know, I probably not very good practice management in the sense of looking at how many dollars that I get per transaction like they teach in veterinary school. I just take care of each person that comes in that door. So, and that thing, making a living, comes secondary. So I want to look at the opposite of that a little bit. So why do veterinarians or people, this could be for anybody in their jobs, why do they struggle? I think the first thing to consider is we forgot to be curious. We forgot to ask the questions of why. Why does it work that way? Why does that succeed? Why do that operation is failing? Why does this chemical work? You know, we have to be willing to think outside the box and to serve people. We sometimes get tired and grumpy, and I certainly have been there, and we don't care about people, and we don't want to see another animal. But we have to have things to bring us back and face up and change that way of thinking. And then pretty soon, sometimes we get a lack of ambition. You know, one of the things that I want to communicate about our story, and as young veterinarians, that we have to communicate to people how much we really care. They don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. The other part that I'd be remiss in communicating is when my wife and I moved to Ashland, we had 2 small children. And if we didn't work hard together, and eating wasn't going to be an option. So fear was a great motivator at first. And I certainly want to thank my family, my wife particularly, but my children for being part of our work. And they certainly have benefited from the service. And something that just in the next few months, our son Mark has finished at K-State with a DVM PhD, and he's going to come back and join us. And nothing will give me, fewer things will give me as great a satisfaction as to work alongside my son. So we also want that personal integrity. And that doesn't mean doing dishonest things, and that's important, but that willingness to say, I don't know, let me figure this out. I'm currently working on a challenging problem in a little feed yard, and I don't know for sure, but my willingness to say, I don't know, that's personal integrity. And that's really, really important to us. So the next thing we have to understand as cow-calf veterinarians, we have a very diverse group of clientele. And as you can see, there's 750,000 cow-calf producers in the United States. And we have to remember that the average cow herd's about 40 cows, but we have various environments, various geography. This ranch on the right is borders Mexico and southern Arizona. This ranch is in Carlsbad, New Mexico. My friend Dr. Mazik in Louisiana. This is near Van Horn, Texas. This is the middle of Illinois. All of them very successful operations, but they all come with different resources, different challenges, and that's what makes our job interesting as veterinarians, is we have to come alongside them. This operation, several years ago, this gentleman started out, he has an MBA, he is a chemical engineer, and he was curious about livestock. This family raises some of the best produce in Illinois, but they have an embryo transfer program. So we can see we have various people that we communicate, and that creates a big challenge. You know, I cross my arms, and if we go out and we cross our arms and say, I'm the vet, I'm here to help you and save the world, versus having an open posture and saying, I'm going to listen, tell me about yourself. That's how we get a ticket on the ranch. And I'll use that terminology. We have to remember, and I tell young veterinarians and interns that come through here, there is not an animal that's walked through our doors on their own, except they're connected to a person. Now, there's sometimes the pets and dogs and cows have left here on their own, not connected to a person, creating a challenge as they run around town. So those are difficulties that we have. But remember, we're in the people business. They just have animals. And that's a great opportunity. We have to ask ourselves, why do these, who are those beef producers? Some of them are motivated to succeed because that's all they do. That's all their ranch. They don't have oil. They don't have early money. Money that they've inherited. They're there to make a living. And if their cows don't breed and they don't raise beef, they don't succeed. Some of them have a diversified cow-calf operation, a farming operation. So those are different. Sometimes we have to plan work around cropping. Some of them inherited the land. All of them are tremendous stewards of the land. Some people have cattle because they're yard art. There was a gentleman in South Alabama that came to Clark County in 2002, and from our clientele, he bought over $1 million worth of cattle, of commercial heifers, because he said, I wanted to see the best cattle that walked, as he sat on the veranda. So we had to listen, see what he wanted. We helped him connect the dots. Some people have it for tax advantage. Some of them are just want cattle to have purely enjoy. So you can see as we list there's various reasons that people have cattle, and we have to understand that, and we have to listen well. And we have to remember that every time we look at an animal, it's an opportunity to serve them. So we have to understand also that our knowledge, the more successful we can help our operations, they need to go beyond traditional veterinary medicine of which antibiotic to use and how to pull a calf and how to test a bull and to preg check a cow. We have to know more than just fix a rectal prolapse, but we have maybe ask questions when those things happen. We have to understand it's important to understand the value of cattle in the marketplace today. We need to understand the value of that cattle to that individual. There's sentimental value. I've had a client that I had to learn the lesson of. The story of him, he'd wait until the end of the next month until I got over there, and he'd give me his bill, his check. But he wore ratty clothes and he drove terrible pickups. They didn't run very well, and I assumed he didn't have any money. I assumed that I made some assumptions about his personal equity that were wrong. But I found out later when I listened to him, it didn't matter if that calf was worth $200. I could treat it like a dog and spend $600 or $700. His neighbor had the same amount of equity, and he didn't know he had a sick calf because he didn't have the same animal husbandry skills. So we have to learn the value of cattle to those individuals. What's their willingness to risk equity? Do they want to try new procedures, or are they satisfied with the status quo? What's their available resources? We have to look around. We don't have to ask. I had a veterinary student riding with me once, and he asked a client that I'd known for 15 years, how many cows do you have? Well, it was a long 2 hours ride home for him, because he got to hear from me why we don't ask people how many cattle they have. It's like asking them how much money in the bank, but I didn't know how many cows he had. I didn't know how many acres he had, but I had a pretty good idea. And I also understood the resources that he had available to him from an equity standpoint. And that gets us to the core of my talk is then what are these tools of production? And we've talked about this for the last 3 days. We've heard many things people talk about, and this is an exciting time of year. I just love the fall of the year because we get to go out and be with people. We just happened to be preg testing their cows this morning. That I got to preg check 150 cows with 2 young brothers. One's 27, one's 29, and they're sharp kids, sharp young people, and they've asked really good questions. But what else do I have to offer? So things that have already been talked about, and we're going to pull this together in our talk, and we have to understand EPDs. How do they work? A new tool is genomic testing and understanding genomic data and how to use it. Here we talk about in AI and synchronization. That's what the core of this group has talked about. These are tools that are useful to us, and we as veterinarians can come alongside and engage in those and learn from it, immerse ourselves, and become curious. There's an opportunity for heifer selection. Temperament. That's real important, particularly when you get a little bit older. I'm pretty much a little bit quicker to stay out of the pen and let cattle run past me. But we also train people to, for instance, today there was 3 of us. In 45 minutes, we preg checked 40 head. We didn't use a hot chop, but they had tremendous facilities, and the cattle walked through. These young fellows have taken the information that we've given them and got a little bit better. Something that we do is we do a lot of freeze branding. We don't do it. I'm not very good at it because I have attention deficit disorder sometimes, and you got to pay attention to detail. An opportunity is to start talking about, when we're preg checking, start talking about body condition and nutrition. They go hand in hand. The cows that were open today were 3-year-olds. They were body condition score of 3.5. So we talked about that a little bit. So these are the tools that we have that are outside traditional veterinary medicine that we can engage in. But let me give you an example. So let's talk just briefly, and I understand that somebody could talk about EPDs for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we still wouldn't have it. But let me just talk briefly about on the surface of EPDs. So EPDs is the expected performance of future progeny in comparison to other animals in the database. An example is when I buy a pickup, I want a red 4-door pickup. I like red so people can see me coming. But I don't care what's underneath the hood. I just tell the gentleman that I'm buying it from, this is what I'm going to do. Well, that's what we can do with cattle today with EPDs. We can determine calving ease. We can determine weaning weight, ribeye, yearling weight, yearling height, docility. Understand that docility is 0.36% heritable, one of the most highly heritable traits. The flip side of that is docility. That means it's 64% your responsibility and my responsibility on what determines the other part of that temperament. So marbling is determined by EPDs, scrotal circumference, milk, Heifer pregnancy is one of the lowest heritable traits, but we have to understand to be able to dialogue about that. Carcass weight. So those are some EPDs. But one example of an EPD that I use over and over is calving ease. Calving ease direct. The definition would be it's expressed as the difference in percentages of unassisted births and first calf heifers. For instance, if you have a bull with a 5 CED versus a bull with a 15 CED, we'll expect to pull 10% more calves using the 5 CED bull in first calf heifers. So the context of that may be a little bit difficult when we first start to look at it. So another way that I often examine it is that bull with a 5 CED, he's in the 60th percentile from calving ease. I probably wouldn't use that on first calf heifers. The bull with a 15 CED is in the top 4%. We can use that. And one of my challenges, and I know there's many people on here, and I've had discussion with people in other states that with their heifer programs, we in our area need to use bulls that are going to be, I think the threshold in the Angus industry for us is 13 or above CEDs. That's just a personal threshold so that I can have clients that use the what we call the Columbus method of calving. And I haven't heard anybody discuss that. It's pretty scientific, and that's just when you go out and discover them every day versus checking them twice a day. So that's my funny for the day. What does calving ease do for us? We decrease dystocia. We increase calf vigor. Colostral absorption is greater in those calves that are born unassisted. We decrease morbidity and mortality. We know those calves that are slow to get up and they don't receive as much colostrum are more likely to get sick or die sometime in their lifetime, not just in the first 30 days. Look at this. Cows are quicker to return to estrus when there's less dystocia. This is a big issue. You know, sometimes I'm pretty frustrated when somebody comes in and they have a group of heifers they bred to an undescribed bull, and I call it indiscriminate fortification for their breeding program, and I know they had 30 or 40 more heifers to calve out. I get to say, I think we'll see them back. But I think we have to understand calving is really an animal welfare issue too. If people would see the difficult births, they would be disappointed with our choices. We greatly improve the predictability and performance of those cattle with just using calving ease. This is a huge one today. It's difficult to train labor to calve out heifers. And we see people using fewer and fewer laborers to do that. And lastly, dead cows don't grow very well, do they? So we can use those known quantity, highly proven calving ease bulls to help ourselves out. So that's one of the tools that we use often. And I give that as an example of EPDs in general. Understand if EPDs work with calving ease, and they do, that they would work with growth, they would work with milk production, predictability, and all those other parameters that we talked about. So these are adding these tools to your tool chest of, first of all, EPDs. Now let's look at this one. I don't need to go into this much more, but here's an opportunity for us. 6% of the dairy cows in this country are bred AI. Look at that. Less than 10% of the beef breed in the U.S. is AI bred. So that's opportunity for us. You know, it just goes all over me when the university people tell these young people that might want to go to rural Kansas, say, well, you can't make a very good living. People, that's hogwash. That's hogwash. Today, 1993 or 4, I AI'd 20 cows, 20 heifers. That was the start of our AI program. Today, I don't do any, but maybe 1 or 2, but we'll AI over 5,000 head of heifers and cows from our clinic. And I don't say that to draw attention to ourselves, but that's the opportunity. and let's get after it. Let's use the tools of the reproductive task force and say, let's try this. So we'll give a couple examples, and I won't belabor this point. Look at the difference there. On on this group of cows, there was $13,000 difference on 300 cows. That's huge. That's real money. Another example, just briefly, and there's many slides that were previously shown about the merits of AI. And one of the things that I like to talk about, and I just had a conversation with a gentleman in Missouri because he picked out 30 heifers out of 60, and he AI'd those and ran the bull for 60 days. And I said, have you thought about this? Why don't you just pick out all 60 heifers, AI them all, and then after 30 days, you ultrasound them, have your veterinarian ultrasound them, and then take those cattle that are 4 months further along and sell them instead of selling them as 800 feeder pound heifers in March, then we'll find a place for you to feed them in Western Kansas. People today, those heifers always feed like a steer. They gain their feed efficiency is really good, and their carcass value is great. And I'll show you a little bit later an example of what that can do for us. But these are examples of hey, have you thought about just AI and don't turn the bull out? And you can see people start to hyperventilate and think, what if it doesn't work? What if the bulls don't breed? Pardon me. So these are examples of how I think every day. So another tool today is genomics. We can measure by drawing blood or some protein out of these animals. We can send that off to the lab and measure what their genetic merit is at an early age. And that can be done in commercial cattle. It's well documented in the seed stock production, but we can do it in commercial cattle also. We can use that as a sorting tool. Well, what if we do this? We have 100 head of steers and 100 head of heifers, and we bleed those heifers because we're going to use that information to sort who we breed. But if the heifers are in their top 20% or top 15% using their index, the steers are going to be there too. So why don't we maybe use that for a marketing tool and say, instead of, okay, so you all probably know I work for Gardner Angus Ranch. Instead of saying, well, they're bred to a Gardner bull and out of Gardner cows, well, how good are Gardner bulls and how good are Gardner cows? We can drive demand when we can characterize a group of cattle. It's like going to the sale barn, and what do you hear them saying? Well, hey, these are sure enough a good kind of cattle with a lot of bone under them from a reputation cow herd. Look at them, they're good footed. That's no characterization of how I'm going to make money. Somebody wants to make money, and we got to create demand. There are marketing tools, yes. Oh, look at this. We can identify parentage. We can actually learn to see which bulls are breeding the most cows out there. That's an interesting observation. We can identify some genetic defects. Genomics are used to enhance the EPDs in the register business. And guess what? We can do that with commercial cattle too. And we do that all the time. So this slide is from a slide I borrowed from the University of Georgia, and it's several years old. So actually, this number is actually 5 million head of cattle in the dairy industry. The Angus industry just gone over 1 million head. And you can see that it's even used in fish. This is a tool that's available for us to either characterize our herd, use it as a marketing tool. And I asked the company that we use, and this is what we've been able to accomplish and help our clients accomplish. And it's a tool that any of us can use. And even though those people that have a few cows, in actuality, I think those people with an average cow herd of 40 cows can benefit from this kind of information also, and they will enjoy their cattle. I have a client that's an older gentleman that's 70 years old, and he just got in the beef industry. He calls me up and says, Randall, what's this genomic information mean, and how can I use it? That's cool. Here's an example of a panel of heifers that we have genomically measured. This particular company indexes those. And this index, for instance, would be a lifetime index. It compares the cost of production from birth to harvest time. So we can say that this animal has a dollar value of 278 and this one is 260. So that's $18 difference in the value of those particular animals. Something else that we as veterinarians can do, we can actually fetal sex. That's another tool, kind of cool. These animals are identified who they're out of. This is a marketing tool, yes and no, but we can characterize that. And we use that nomenclature to help buyers come and buy those cattle so that they can make money. So let's look at the description, the numeric description, the economic description of these cattle compared to what you hear on a livestock auction market. And sometimes just for enjoyment, go to, and I'm not picking on them, but just go to listen to Superior Livestock or Large Sale Barn, and then think about this opportunity. Think about this description. And these are the tools that are available to us. So then we have to start to understand marketing channels. Obviously, there's bulls. Hopefully, they're not bulls at 400 pounds that need to be steers, steer calves, and what's the value of those? Developing an understanding of cows, heifers, coals, and how we can help people take advantage of the coal market. For instance, we need to be done selling our open cows right now. The cow market's starting to slip. It's moving from it's got up as high as 78 cents, and now it's starting to slide because there's more cows on the market. Understanding those helps our clients take advantage of that. And I know that in different parts of the country, it's going to be vastly different. We have the opportunity because there's cow plants that kill these here. So I was having a young veterinarian preg check some heifers the other day, and I said, so what's this heifer weigh? What's the value of her? What's the value of her as a open heifer? Start to ask ourselves that. We ought to know that when somebody brings us a cow that needs to have something done on it, say, well, so what's your goals? We need to learn to ask these questions. This has been tremendous since COVID's come up. There's plenty of opportunity to sell to consumers beef. We need to know how to increase that value of every animal on that place and capture it. And here again, at the end of this, I'll show you several examples of that. So there's seed stocker operations and that sell their livestock through private treaty. There's cow-calf operations and some that sell their calves at weaning time, at yearlings, and retain ownership, and actually through maintain through the packing plants, sale barn people, stocker operations. We need to understand these and understand grid marketing. The more investment that we make in these cattle prior to leaving the ranch, the more opportunity to return that investment the longer we own those animals. Direct marketing to beef, we see people trying to get cattle slaughtered to sell beef to their friends, neighbors, cousins, and aunts and uncles. We have people selling a beef at $6 a hanging pound. So if you have a 1,000-pound carcass, I think I can do the math. That's $6,000. That's a lot of money. And we can be an encouragers of that, but we have to know that. Let me give you an example. Here's an example of a U.S. premium beef closeout. Notice this was just several weeks ago in July, a group of cattle that returned $267 above commodity market. They actually brought $1.36. So why did they do that? Well, those cattle probably graded really well. There was probably a lot of choice and prime cat, actually a lot of prime in there. You notice that prime is $33.60. Choice paid for $19 above choice select spread. So let's look at that. Let's look at the big picture. There was 41 head in there. That's $11,000. The way I think of that, let's say this cow herd, these were all steers, and he had 41 steers he fed out and sold. That'd be like running 11 more steers out there and 11 more cows out there in the pasture. People, I think that's free money, but we have to understand that, and we can help them capture that value. That gentleman I was talking to in Missouri, he's going to send his heifers out here and let us feed those for him. So The further I go along, you can see that I love what I do and the passion that I have. And I want to just share with you 2 stories, and then I'll close. How did I get started in this? An example of I have a client that one of my favorite clients, because they were the first ones in 31 years ago to come and ask me to preg check their cows. 850 head of commercial cows, 50 miles away. It's beautiful over there, eastern Comanche County. Well, each year they calve out 130 head of heifers. Well, in 1995, they did it in a dry lot because they needed to check them. They had 3 full-time employees plus the manager. So they checked them 24 hours a day. And so that particular year, there was 40% dystocias, 10 C-sections. That's a lot. Now, I love doing C-sections. I really still do. When it's between 8 and 5, and I don't have anything else going on. And I love pulling out a live calf and sending a pair home. I just love that. But I don't think that was working out very well for them. I said, what bulls are you using? Now, understand, I was 35 years old. The manager was 65 or 70. So I'm wet behind the ears, and I could have crossed my arms and said, well, this is stupid. You're just bothering me. It's an inconvenience. Ladies and gentlemen, he had a problem, and I was there to serve him. And I didn't know that I was doing this, but as I look back, my parents taught me the attitude of caring about people. So I said, what bulls are you using? Oh, they're good ones. They're proven, crossbred, light birth weight bulls. Now that's characterization, isn't it? Get me some of those. Sorry for the sarcasm. But I did say this. So when you're doing a C-section, picture this, cow standing up there and I'm doing C-section. You got a captive audience. And it takes me, at that time, took me an hour to do that cesarean. So I said, how's that working out for you? And I didn't have to answer that question. He knew where I was going. And he said, well, I can't afford a better bull. I can't afford those calving ease bulls. I have a pretty good friend that sells those, I think. And he said, I just can't go out there and buy one of those bulls. And I said, let me think, how much money have you spent? Now look at that. He's 50 miles away. He's made at least 10 trips to my place. It takes 4 hours to do that. And I think he probably could afford something better. Oh, here's what's happened. Today, the same ranch, they calve out 120 heifers. Now, I chose the breeding time for this particular year. That's when we could AI the heifers. And they were calving during that polar vortex from February 4th to the 15th, exactly right then. And their whole goal, they were calving them out. For those days, they pulled them up in a pen because they just had to have them close. It didn't get above 0, as low as minus 14, but there was no dystocias. And they had 1 full-time employee, 2 teenagers. They lost 2 calves. I think that's pretty good. Well, how'd they do that? How'd they do that today? So think about those tools that we've talked about. AI, synchronization, EPDs, genomic understanding. Those are a few of them. We've used AI sires that are proven, ranking in the top 5% for calving ease, top 15% for growth, top 10% for end product merit. We talked about marketing. Here's the result. He's created demand. People want his steers. He's become a price maker, not a price taker. And he has a standing order for his steers weaned 60 days, and they'll pay him $5 above the Kansas weighted average for that particular time. You know why? It's because the buyer knows that he can pick them up from that ranch, dump them straight out on wheat pasture. They make him money, and he pays a lot of money for them. What's he do with his heifers? Those heifers that he doesn't retain for himself, he sells them all. They're not coals. They're not a coal heifer. He sells them for steer price. So look what I can't take credit for all of it. We just pointed him in the right direction and connected the dots. And if you're listening as a young veterinarian or something, build the relationships, ask questions, become interested in their operation. Now, one last example. Do I need to quit, Lee?
Yeah, we're running up against the time, Dr. Spare.
Okay, can I run through this? This is good. Good. 30 head of
Go ahead.
30 head of commercial heifers they bought from me. She AI'd them to a red Angus bull without me knowing about it. I said, how are you going to market those? And she said, I said, Mom, I'm just going to take them to Woodward. Well, she'd become a price taker. So the next year she used AI sires, genomically tested her bull or calves. She sold 11 20-month-old or 11-month-old bulls for $22.50. We used the same tools. 2018, she synchronized all of her cows, and I looked out in her pasture and I said, what are you going to do with those original 6-year-old bulls? Well, I love those. They all had names. I said, oh, okay. You just take them to Winter Livestock for $300. Okay. Several days later, she called me back and said, why? What do you think I can do? I said, sell them. They still have value. But you know what? She sold them. Today, she sold them. Well, at that time, she sold 30 cows and 23 bulls for $105,000. And we used the skills of ultrasound, fetal sexing. We taught her how to retain those heifers. So this year, she AI'd them all using it. Some of the very best bulls of the breed. They're genomically tested. We did those things. She's already sold 30 cows for $62,000, $146,000 worth of income off of 75 cows. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for letting me share. I love what I do. I would just encourage you to become passionate, care a lot, be a person of an integrity, and build relationships. So, thank you very much.